Senator Bill Hagerty is the first member of Congress to take action against what happened to him and other senators in the Arctic Frost investigation, where they seized the phone records of sitting senators and a member of Congress. Jordan, the senator is going through an FCC route for this, trying to take action against Verizon, who was his telecommunications carrier, and trying to get reforms, acknowledgments that this won't happen again. And really, this is the first effort we've seen by a member of Congress pushing back on what happened to them.
This is, again, it's a way to go, because you can look at this both ways, versus the FBI and DOJ wrongdoing by issuing these subpoenas, putting them under seal, calling these senators a flight risk like Bill Hagerty, and then, of course, keeping it from them. So issuing that subpoena then to the telecom company, in this case it was Verizon, and then saying, we need the number, here's the phone number, we need all the proprietary information from this period of time. By the way, this is under seal, so you can't inform the person whose number that is. And we've heard from some of these carriers, oh, well, we just looked up phone numbers. We didn't look up to see who they were, and we don't do that when the FBI comes to us, except for when they issued the report and gave the information to the FBI. Guess what it said on top of the document? Bill Hagerty. So it identified Senator Hagerty. They were able to, at Verizon, identify. So even if they didn't know when they first got the number whose information they were getting, they had a second chance to ask the FBI, hey, wait. You're asking us to give over this proprietary information of a U.S. senator, and you're calling them a flight risk, and you're saying it's a part of this criminal investigation. We've got to have more answers. We have a lot of questions before we're just going to hand this information over to you. So that excuse of, well, it's just a bunch of random numbers that they send us, that may be the case when they initially receive it from the DOJ. But then when they start compiling the report, they absolutely know who the number belongs to. So we saw some carriers like AT&T push back on Jack Smith. And you know what? Jack Smith never went back to them. You know why? He knew he was in the wrong. He was trying to see if he could catch these telecom companies and try to act like this is business as usual, like another criminal investigation, and just get the information. Well, one AT&T I guess person at the company who received this said no, and that was with Senator Ted Cruz's account. And they said no. They responded to Jack Smith. Jack Smith never came back to them, so he had no argument for them. So all of these companies could have pushed back just a little by saying, we don't think you have the right to this information. We need more information. We don't believe we can keep this from our client, our customer, and this is something totally new. This is not like how we normally conduct business, even with you all, when you're involved in a criminal investigation. And by saying that, they could have shut down the entire Arctic Frost look at these U.S. senators. Instead, other AT&T agents handed the information right over. So it wasn't just one company did the right thing and another company did the wrong thing. Inside the same company, you were having good things done and bad things done. And that's what we have to get at, making sure that this never happens again, this abuse of our legal system, to get at a separate branch of government and to be able to hide it from them because, quote, Jack Smith qualified them as flight risk. U.S. senators as flight risk. The telecom companies who did push back were on the right side. But that's all it would have taken if these other telecom companies like Verizon had a backbone and just pushed back and said, this doesn't seem right to us. This doesn't pass the smell test. We need more information about why you're keeping this under seal, why you believe these individuals are flight risk, because we're supposed to inform them within a certain amount of days if you have subpoenaed their records, and this is not allowing us to abide by our normal terms and services and agreement we have with our customers, because that's what those senators are. And I would love to see Jack Smith's response to his team, because you would think his team would say, okay, let's go after him. And he called them off. He called the dogs off. And I only can imagine that's because he knew that if this ended up in a legal proceeding, he had the weaker argument. Such a weak argument that it wasn't even worth trying to push back on AT&T.
The senators, there were 8 of them that were targeted by this. It was right. Senator Graham, Well, actually 9, 8 had their records actually obtained by the special counsel's office. That was Senator Graham, Senator Hagerty, Senator Hawley, Senator Sullivan, Senator Tuberville, Senator Johnson, Senator Lummis, and Senator Blackburn, as well as Representative Mike Kelly. Ted Cruz was also a target of this, but as you mentioned, AT&T did not provide his information, even though some of these others, also AT&T customers, did have their information provided. But why
uniform?
And why I think this is so important for people to remember, because as we talk about, these are senators. It's egregious that they could do this as it is, that he was able to get through these hoops. But remember, Jack Smith testified a few weeks ago on Capitol Hill, and he was telling the members of Congress that day that the reason for using it under seal, the reason for including the language flight risk, et cetera, are basically just pro forma statements that they file when they want it under seal. That even that is so egregious that the Department of Justice under the Biden administration, their policy was to file statements that were just essentially boilerplate language to get what they wanted. The ends justified the means for the Biden Department of Justice. Things like that have to change, because if they can do that with a boilerplate language saying could be a flight risk, we want you to mask the number, and the courts go along with it. If they're willing to do that for a U.S. senator, not a single person has the right to privacy in their own data anymore under what the Biden administration's DOJ was doing. And I think that's why when we have to continue down this path, we have to see the communication to protect not just the senators and the co-equal branch of government, but for the average ACLJ listener. Because if they feel like they can get away with it, what is the next administration going to do that doesn't have the civil liberties of Americans at mind? That's where we have to continue down this path.
If this can happen to a sitting U.S. senator, it can happen to any American very easily. And so the way that these telecom companies just kind of bend over backwards for any time the FBI is seeking information, I think should not be the norm. They should ask questions and push back, and they shouldn't just say, well, we got a bunch of random numbers, let's give them everything they want. Why not look into those numbers and see if they're kind of similarly situated? So if they're all U.S. senators or all elected officials, like they were in this case, and they're using terms that wouldn't make sense for current elected officials, like they're a flight risk somehow, even though they have no history of that. I mean, treating them like they are cartel leaders, really. I mean, that's how Jack Smith tried. Now, when there was pushback, he didn't fight back.